I used to believe our neighborhood was the kind of place where nothing truly dramatic could happen, just a grid of beige houses arranged with military precision, identical mailboxes standing like obedient soldiers, and lawns trimmed so evenly you'd think someone used laser levels instead of lawnmowers. My life fit right in with that quiet sameness. I woke up early, brewed my media, roast coffee with the devotion of a monk, and watched the sun crawl over the cul-de-sac, act like it was clocking in for work. My wife, Captain Elise Rowan of the State Police, typically left before dawn, boots echoing through the hallway with a rhythm that somehow made me feel safe even after she'd driven off. She was the type of person who made presence feel like structure, stillness feel like strategy. I, on the other hand, was more of the neighborhood's designated guy who waves from the driveway. It was a role I played with pride. I didn't bother anyone. I didn't even jaywalk. On weekends I'd sit on the porch, a book resting on my stomach, and let the suburban calm wash over me. Peace, predictable peace, and then, because every story has a villain, there was Karen, HOA president, self-appointed guardian of visual consistency. Our neighborhood bylaws gave her about as much power as a coupon book, but she carried herself like she was on the Supreme Court. And unfortunately for us, she lived just 2 houses to the left, close enough to monitor everything from our porch paint color to the angle of our recycling bins. Elise found her amusing. I tried to, but amusement has limits. That Tuesday afternoon began like any other, birds chirping, sprinklers clicking rhythmically, and my neighbor Gary yelling at a squirrel like it owed him money. I was reorganizing the garage, which mostly meant moving boxes from one place to another while pretending I'd made progress. Elise had taken the day off rare for her, so she was inside finishing paperwork for some statewide operation I only half understood. Around 3 o'clock, I heard the unmistakable sound of Karen's footsteps, a rapid, authoritative tap, 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 the sound of someone who believes the world is a hallway and every hallway needs policing. I peeked around the garage door just in time to see her marching across our lawn, clutching her HOA clipboard like a holy relic. She didn't knock. Of course she didn't knock. Why knock on a door when you can announce your presence like a government audit? I started toward her, opening my mouth to ask if she needed something, but she waved me off like an inconvenient pop-up ad. "I'm here to address an urgent violation," she declared. Her tone suggested imminent danger, maybe an overgrown hedge threatening national security. "You're going to want to step aside, sir." Sir, she used it like an insult. Before I could ask what the problem was, Elise opened the front door. She was off duty, hair in a loose ponytail, wearing sweatpants, and holding a mug that said "World's Okayest Spouse." A normal, cozy, deeply non-criminal sight. Karen inhaled sharply, as though Elise's very existence violated a subsection of a rule she had personally highlighted in neon. "Who," she demanded, "is this?" Elise blinked. "I live here." "Not on my list you don't," Karen snapped. "Your list." I repeated, "Yes, the approved occupancy registry." She patted her clipboard. "Only individuals documented on this form may reside in this community." Elise raised an eyebrow, amused in the dangerous way she gets when people accidentally step on landmines they don't realize are landmines. "Well," she said calmly, "I'm his wife." "Impossible," Karen huffed. "I've never seen you, and this neighborhood does not permit unofficial tenants." Unofficial tenants, that was the moment my peaceful, beige life cracked. I sensed a hook in the universe, like someone yanking open a dusty curtain to reveal a stage I hadn't realized I'd been standing on. Karen planted a hand on her hip, narrowed her eyes, and delivered the line that would ignite everything that followed. "I'm giving you a formal warning," she said to Elise, "and I'll be contacting the authorities to have you removed from the property if you don't vacate immediately." Elise took a slow sip of her coffee. "You're calling the police." "I am," Karen snapped. "Right now." That was when the absurdity reached critical mass. Because the woman Karen was threatening to remove from the property, the person she believed she could scare with a phone call was the commanding officer of the entire state police force. I looked at Elise. Elise looked at me, and then the moment solidified in my chest, heavy, electric, the kind of moment you later replay in a dramatic montage. because that letter in my mailbox didn't just contain paper. It contained war. When Karen said she was calling the police, she didn't mean it as a threat so much as a performance. She strutted backward across our lawn like she expected a spotlight to follow her, flipped open her phone with the dramatic flair of a magician revealing a dove, and jabbed at the screen as if dialing emergency services was an Olympic sport. I could practically hear the internal narration she was probably preparing for her HOA newsletter. Local hero prevents illegal occupant from invading peaceful community. Elise leaned against the doorframe, remarkably unbothered for someone being theatrically accused of trespassing on her own porch. I knew that posture, the relaxed shoulders, the tiny twitch of amusement at the corner of her mouth. It was the posture of someone who spent her days dealing with armed standoffs, highway chaos, and political incompetence, and who now found herself confronted by a woman whose biggest battle involved shrub height. "You want to intervene," Elise whispered to me, "or wait for the show. Let's give it a minute," I murmured, "just to see how deep this rabbit hole goes." Elise nodded like a scientist observing a very confused squirrel attempt calculus. Meanwhile, Karen paced the lawn, practically vibrating with righteous fury as she spoke into her phone. "Yes, hello, this is an urgent matter," she said loudly enough for the birds 2 blocks away to hear. "We have an unauthorized woman on the property. No, she's refusing to leave. Yes, I'm the HOA president, so this falls under my jurisdiction." Elise snorted. Jurisdiction. She said it like she carried a badge. Karen shot us a glare that suggested she believed her HOA clipboard was in fact a badge. She marched back toward us, chin high, as though she expected to find Elise attempting to escape through a window. "Officers will arrive shortly," she informed us. "I recommend that you pack your belongings before they do." Elise sipped from her mug again. "All of them. Don't be smart." Karen snapped. "This is your final notice. Final for today," I muttered. "I beg your pardon." Karen turned her full glare on me. "I regret to admit my survival instincts temporarily malfunctioned." "Nothing," I said, "just admiring your dedication." She narrowed her eyes like I'd just spoken in code and she intended to crack it. Then, with all the brisk entitlement of a mall cop rejecting someone's coupon, she scribbled something on her violation pad and tore it off with a flourish. "Here," she said, thrusting it at Elise, "your formal citation." Elise accepted the slip between 2 fingers, studying it like she was examining a questionable artifact. "Unauthorized human presence." She read aloud, tone flat, "Is that a real category?" "It is now," Karen said smugly. That was the moment sarcasm officially became my coping mechanism. "Do we get points for creativity?" I asked, because that phrasing is bold. Elise shot me a look that said stop and keep going at the same time. Karen, however, did not appreciate my commentary. "You two can joke all you want," she said, "but this community thrives on order, predictability, rules." She tapped her clipboard once more for emphasis. "Without enforcement, civilization collapses." Elise raised an eyebrow. "Collapses completely," Karen replied. "One unregistered spouse is the first domino." I blinked. Was she serious? Yes, she was. Then, like storm clouds gathering in a cartoon, the patrol car rolled into the cul-de-sac. Not Elise's officers, just 2 local patrol units doing their best to keep up with Karen's melodrama. Karen turned toward them with both arms raised, pointing at Elise like she'd just flushed out a fugitive from behind a dumpster. "That's her," she shouted. "The intruder." The officers stepped out and immediately looked exhausted by the situation. Officer Daly, who'd responded to 3 separate illegal mailbox decoration calls from Karen in the past year, closed his eyes for a brief moment. Maybe a tiny prayer, maybe just emotional recalibration. "Ma'am," he said to Elise, "are you supposed to be here?" Elise didn't answer verbally. Instead, she pulled out her ID, her state police ID, the kind with a holographic seal and lettering that makes grown men sit up straighter. Daly blinked, then blinked again. "Captain Rowan," he said slowly as though trying to reconcile reality with the circus he'd wandered into. Karen leaned in, squinting at the ID. "That means nothing," she said. "This is a residential matter." Daly gently massaged the bridge of his nose. "Karen, she literally outranks everyone in my department." Karen scoffed. "Not in the HOA." Elise's face did an entire paragraph of expression in 1 second. Daly and his partner exchanged that silent cop-to-cop conversation that means I can't believe this is my job today. "There's no crime here," Daly said firmly. "Please stop calling 911 for non-emergencies." Karen gasped as if personally wounded. "This is an emergency." "It really isn't," Daly replied, climbing back into his car before the hole got any deeper. As they drove away, Karen pivoted toward us with an expression that mixed outrage, humiliation, and the kind of determination that suggested she was already drafting 17 new amendments to the bylaws. "This isn't over," she hissed. "I will restore order." And just like that, she stormed off, leaving Elise holding the world's most ridiculous violation slip. My humiliation arrived 2 beats later, quietly settling into my chest. Because Karen wasn't just angry, she felt challenged, and a challenged HOA president becomes a force of nature, a beige hurricane. I watched her disappear into her house, a sinking feeling tugging at me like gravity. "Well," Elise said, folding the slip neatly, "looks like we've got a new hobby." I sighed. "She's going to escalate, isn't she?" Elise nodded. "Oh, absolutely." And that was how the real conflict began, sarcasm, violation paper cuts, and humiliation included. If I thought Karen's 911 stunt was as ridiculous as things could get, I was a sweet, naive summer child. Because over the next 2 weeks, she escalated with the dedication of someone training for a petty Olympics. Every day, another violation slip, another passive-aggressive email, another note taped to our door, like she was trying to wallpaper the place with her indignation. According to her paperwork, Elise violated everything from unapproved vehicle usage, her unmarked patrol SUV to disruptive presence existing. My personal favorite was excessive confidence, which she classified under behavioral infractions. Karen didn't realize she had essentially declared war on a woman whose day job involved coordinating statewide operations with helicopters and tactical teams. Elise found it hilarious. I did not. There's something uniquely embarrassing about being the guy neighbors whisper about when they pass your mailbox. I heard bits of conversations. That's the couple Karen's after. Apparently the wife doesn't have the right paperwork. I heard she's technically a squatter. A squatter. Elise roasted hot dogs over tactical bonfires. She didn't squat. I tried to shrug it off, but humiliation has a way of sticking to you like static, clinging dryer sheets. The low point arrived on a Saturday morning under the kind of soft suburban sunlight that should have been peaceful, but instead felt like stage lighting for my impending doom. The HOA monthly board meeting, open to all residents, was scheduled for 10 o'clock at the community clubhouse. Normally, these meetings involved discussions about pool hours and whether beige or eggshell beige best matched the community aesthetic, but Karen had added a new agenda item. I knew because she accidentally CC'd me. Agenda item #3 unauthorized occupant enforcement hearing, Rowan residents. Elise offered to come with me, but I didn't want her to. Not because I doubted her. She could dismantle Karen's ego like a bomb squad unscrewing a pressure plate, but because the entire situation felt like my failure. My house, my HOA, my mess. So at 9:58 a.m., I walked into the clubhouse alone. The smell of coffee and laminated paper filled the room. The board sat at a folding table like a tribunal. Neighbors filled metal chairs arranged in rows. Karen stood at the front, posture tall, expression triumphant, like a cat about to present a very dead bird to an audience. Conversations quieted as I entered, and the humiliation hit me. Hard, sudden, like walking into a glass door that you thought was open. Karen cleared her throat into a microphone she absolutely did not need. "Welcome, residents," she said. "Today we will be addressing a matter of extreme importance to community safety. Safety, from my wife, apparently." I took a seat in the second row, trying not to make eye contact with anyone. Karen began her presentation with a slideshow for reasons known only to her. The first slide read, "Unauthorized occupancy crisis in Comic Sans." Comic Sans, that alone should have been criminal. As you can see, she began, clicking to a blurry photo of Elise stepping out of her patrol SUV. This woman has been residing in our community without proper registration or approval. Someone raised a hand. "Isn't that his wife?" Karen didn't blink. "Allegedly," she said, "but I never received the spousal disclosure form." "The what?" the neighbor asked. "Section 7, subsection 12. Karen said sharply, flipping through her clipboard like a medieval monk flipping scripture. "Any new spouse must be declared within 5 days of marriage. We've been married 8 years, I mumbled. Long-term violations are still violations." Karen snapped. She clicked to the next slide, potential threats to community order. Bullet points included uniforms, government vehicles, assertive posture. The room buzzed with uncomfortable laughter. My face burned. I wanted to sink into the metal chair and dissolve. Karen wasn't done. She pulled out the violation slip she'd given Elise and held it up like evidence in a courtroom drama. "We must act," she declared. "If we allow unauthorized humans," she actually said humans, "we invite chaos." A board member leaned into his microphone. "Karen, are we sure this is appropriate?" "Absolutely," she said, "and I will now open the floor to any resident who wishes to speak about concerns regarding the Rowan household." I held my breath. The first neighbor to stand was Phil, who'd once asked if grass could be too green. Not a promising start, I just want to say. He began nervously. "Sometimes I see flashing lights at their house when her police car comes home late. It's startling." Murmurs of agreement. I felt the ground tilt under me. Then another woman stood. "I heard she carries a gun," she whispered theatrically. "In our neighborhood. She's law enforcement." I said loudly, unable to stop myself. "It's literally her job." Karen banged her gavel. Yes, she had a gavel, so aggressively it almost snapped. "Order, we will proceed with the board's decision." She turned to me, eyes glittering with victory. "Effective immediately, the HOA is issuing a mandatory compliance directive. Your wife must vacate the property within 72 hours or face escalating penalties." The room gasped. My stomach dropped. My humiliation reached critical mass, thick, dense, impossible to swallow. I stood, voice tight. "This is insane. This is order," Karen corrected. "This is community safety." And just like that, the meeting adjourned. Neighbors avoiding my eyes, Karen basking in triumph, and me walking home feeling like I'd been exiled from my own life. Elise waited on the porch when I returned. One look at my face and she knew. "It was that bad?" she asked softly. I nodded. "Worse." She exhaled, slow and steady, the kind of breath she takes before a tactical briefing. "All right," she said. "Then we're done playing defense." I looked up. Her eyes had that familiar glint, the glint that meant something was about to change. "It's time," Elise said, "for payback." And just like that, the low point became the turning point. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear. Fear would have been easier. What kept me awake was the gnawing humiliation of sitting in that clubhouse while Karen swung her gavel around like she was presiding over the Supreme Court of Beige, and everyone else just let it happen. By 2 in the morning, the house was silent except for the faint hum of Elise typing in her office. She wasn't working on police reports. She was working on something far more dangerous: paperwork. The next morning, she slid a cup of coffee toward me with the solemnity of a priest offering communion. "I've been reading," she said. "The bylaws?" I asked. "All 64 pages," she replied, tapping a stack of printed documents thick enough to qualify as a weapon. Karen's entire crusade is built on bylaws she hasn't actually read. "That tracks," I muttered. Elise sat across from me, eyes bright with a specific kind of focus, a strategic, finely sharpened focus I'd seen before major operations. "So," she began, "I found something." She turned the pages and pointed to a section near the back. Bylaw 12F. Any security or law enforcement personnel residing in the community may be designated as supplemental safety officers with full HOA privileges if requested by the homeowner. I stared. "Wait, full HOA privileges, meaning?" Elise said, that if I file this request and the homeowner signs, then I'm not just allowed to be here. She smirked. I become part of the HOA leadership. A slow grin spread across my face. You'd outrank Karen in about 12 ways, Elise replied, and the best part, she flipped to another section. If 2 officers with equal or higher rank join the HOA, they can form a majority vote to temporarily suspend the authority of the sitting president, meaning we could. I didn't finish the sentence. Elise didn't have to. Her smile answered everything. That's how the plan was born. Legal, elegant, devastating. The next step was assembling our team. Elise made 2 phone calls. By noon, Lieutenant Ramos and Major Hutchins, both residents of nearby neighborhoods, both technically eligible according to the rules, arrived with their own copies of the bylaws and the kind of expressions that suggested Karen had no idea a tactical operation was about to be performed on her front lawn. We spent the afternoon preparing. Elise drafted the forms. Ramos reviewed the procedural language like he was reading someone their rights. Hutchins practiced saying, "Madam President, please step aside," until he could deliver it without laughing. By the time the HOA emergency session, called by Karen, of course, began at 5 o'clock, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: confidence. The clubhouse was full again, neighbors buzzing with the same nervous energy I'd felt during the last meeting. Karen stood at the front of the room, chin high, gripping her gavel like she feared someone might steal it. Today, she announced, we will finalize the removal order against the Rowan household. The room murmured. And then the doors opened behind her. Elise stepped in first, crisp uniform, badge gleaming, boots echoing with controlled authority. Ramos and Hutchins followed, each in full dress attire. Conversations collapsed into whispers. Karen froze mid-sentence, turning slowly like someone sensing a velociraptor in the bushes. "What is this?" she demanded. Elise didn't answer immediately. She walked right to the front, placed 3 signed forms on the table, and met Karen's glare with calm precision. "This," she said, "is an official petition under Bylaw 12F. Karen blinked. 12 what? Elise nodded toward the papers. "I am now a designated supplemental safety officer for this community, fully registered, fully empowered, per your own bylaws." The room erupted in gasps loud enough to rattle the cheap ceiling tiles. Karen snatched the papers and skimmed them. "You can't just. This isn't. There's a process, correct?" Elise said, and we followed the process. She gestured to the officers behind her. "Additionally, Lieutenant Ramos and Major Hutchins have joined as auxiliary members under the same provision." Karen's face went pale. "You invited them to live here?" "No," Elise said. "The bylaw only states residency within the greater jurisdictional boundary, and they qualify." Hutchins stepped forward. "As per subsection 12F3, he said, our combined rank grants us temporary majority authority over HOA proceedings when matters of safety are in question." "This isn't a safety issue," Karen snapped. Elise tilted her head. "You called 911 and filed a crisis report titled Unauthorized Occupancy Emergency." Karen faltered. The room waited. Elise nodded to the officers, then faced the audience. "By authority granted under the bylaws, we are issuing a motion to suspend the current HOA president pending review." Ramos added, seconded, Hutchins carried, 3 voices, clean, official, devastating. Karen's gavel slipped from her hand and clattered onto the table. She stared at us, stunned into silence. You can't remove me," she whispered. "Actually," Elise said, "we just did." The room broke into applause. Real applause, not polite neighbor applause. People stood, cheered, someone even shouted, "Finally." Karen backed away, crushed under the weight of her own rules. Elise turned to me, eyes softening, ready to go home. I exhaled, something inside me finally unwinding. More than ready. As we walked out, neighbors approached to apologize, laugh, shake our hands, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel humiliated. I felt whole. Back on our porch, Elise slipped her hand into mine. "So," she said, "think Karen learned her lesson." I gazed down the cul-de-sac, peaceful again under the evening sun. Maybe harmony isn't beige after all. Elise smirked. Or maybe, I added, they wanted order, and you gave them legend. She laughed softly. And yeah, the HOA never bothered us again. Outside, the sun cast long shadows across the cul-de-sac. Birds chirped, sprinklers clicked in rhythm, and the neighborhood's beige monotony felt oddly peaceful. Karen retreated to her house, plotting her next move, which would be moot. For the first time in weeks, our porch was ours again. No threats, no letters, no absurd 911 calls. Elise squeezed my hand. Think she learned her lesson. I smirked, watching her walk toward the garden, sun glinting off her badge like a halo. Maybe harmony isn't beige after all. She laughed softly, leaning against the railing, or maybe, I added, they wanted order, and you gave them legend, and that's how it ended. Karen's crusade fizzled under the weight of her own rules, neighbors whispered about her in muted tones, and our life returned to quiet, calculated perfection. We kept the bylaws on the coffee table, not as threats, but as a reminder that patience, law, and creativity win where yelling and clipboards fail. So yeah, the HOA never bothered us again. And if you loved watching Karen get outmaneuvered, hit subscribe, because there are always more battles to watch unfold in suburban paradise.